Hey guys, welcome to another Star Wars The Old Republic free-to-play option guides for, in this case, the Dirty Fighting Scoundrel. The purpose of these videos, these guides, is to help you as a free-to-play player who only has your 2 quick slot bars, your 24 slots, to be able to effectively and as fully as possible play your class and your spec without having to invest money in additional bars. Now, for most classes, when I say to as fully as possible, it ends up being completely fully. You can do it. You don't need additional bars. It's absolutely doable. Unfortunately, Scoundrel is this one class that, as I've looked at it, it is incredibly difficult. You have to make painful sacrifices. You have to make some sacrifices, especially in this spec, Dirty Fighting, which border on like taking away something that is intrinsic to the class. Although there's a way around that, which I'm going to explain now. Because scoundrels and gunslingers have this one unique mechanic that other classes do not have. It's the cover mechanic. You ever seen a movie when the good guys have the gun and they're kind of hunched over behind a barrel or a wall or something, you know, taking cover? Scoundrels and gunslingers do that through cover. And when they're in cover, they get something called the cover bar. It's this additional bar which replaces your first bar, your first quick slot bar. And the reason for this is that certain skills can only be used from cover. And the idea in the design is to give this bar so that you can keep your abilities separate. You can keep track of what can only be used from cover. And when you're not in cover, you don't have those abilities there to take up space. Fortunately for you, you get your cover bar. I'm not going to explain it in this guide, and the reason is because I don't think that the cover bar is helpful, generally speaking. I don't use it on my Scoundrel or on my Gunslinger, and the reason for that is I just think it's too much to try to remember, you know, a second bar which uses the same buttons as the first bar, but all the buttons do different things. It seems too complicated to me. I don't like the idea of doing it, but you can certainly do that and find a way to fit everything you need without really giving anything up in. And what you should do is watch this video, because what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be explaining which skills this spec doesn't need. And I'm going to be explaining which skills you can get rid of, and I'm going to be explaining why it might hurt to get rid of a particular skill and why we might want to have it. And you can use that knowledge once you're at the point where you need to start having extra space. You can use that knowledge to try to put stuff onto your cover bar if need be. The other big deal about cover bar is that when you first log in as a level 1 smuggler, you'll have this ability: take cover on your bar. Take it off. It takes up a quick slot bar, or a quick slot, and it's something which no smuggler has used since the game came out. You might say, how do you take cover? The way you take cover is you go into your options menu and you go into the keybinds, okay? And there is a way in, I think it's in targeting, the targeting section. I may be wrong about that, but there's an option near the top of one of those sections to bind a key to cover, which means there's a key unrelated to a quick slot, and that key makes your character go into cover. And the reason that smugglers have always used this is because the take cover skill that was on the quick slot bar was buggy for a very long time. And just binding a key to take cover worked much more consistently. And that's what you should do. It'll save you space. The other skill you're going to have that you should take off is quick travel. Quick travel is something which you don't need on your bar. It's not a sacrifice at all. It is a way to travel to a waypoint. You know, when you travel all throughout the world, you get certain kind of milestones, and you can go back there using quick travel. It has a 30-minute cooldown, and you just access it by pressing P, and that shows you a list of all your skills, and you can access and use it from there. I don't bind a key to quick travel on my quick slot bars, and a lot of other players don't. It's just something you don't need to do at all. a lot of people just access it by pressing P and then scrolling down and clicking on it there. That's completely fine. You do not need that at all. So, how are you going to go about fitting everything into your 24 slots now, other than taking those two things off? Here's what I want you to do. As you level up, I would like for you to train every single ability that's offered to you. And then what I would like you to do is I will tell you now which abilities you can remove when you need more space. So in other words, I'm going to tell you, because I've played this game for a long time, I've played every class, every spec, like I know this game, I'm going to tell you which things you can get rid of because you don't need them to play this spec. I will also tell you which ones you really should have, but we just can't keep because of space considerations. But again, later on, once you know the skills better and the game better, you can try to fit them into your cover bar if you really want to. All right, so the first skill I'll talk about is Charged Burst. This is really a gunslinger skill more than a scoundrel skill. It's useful to have as a scoundrel because it's your longest ranged attack, 30 meters. Most of your scoundrel stuff is short range. But it's not really anything to do with what your Dirty Fighting Spec is about. And if you need a 30-meter attack for some reason, you do have Flurry of Bolts, which does not do as much damage, but then again, Charge Burst also has, it is a channeled ability. Not channeled, but it has a cast time. It takes time to cast. So, you can get rid of this safely as a Dirty Fighting Scoundrel. So what that means is that probably about the time you get your 25th ability, right, and you don't have room for it on your quick slot bar, take Charged Burst off and put the other one on. The next one I'm going to say that you should get rid of is Back Blast, and this one hurts. Now, I'm not saying you should get rid of this one and them in this order. I'm just saying it because it's the lowest level one. I'm going by level here. Back Blast is kind of like a part of what makes a scoundrel a scoundrel. It's you get up in close quarters, you get behind the enemy, and you fire it away. Unfortunately, it's just something which we can't afford. Scrappers need this skill, so I told them to keep it. Dirty Fighters can get rid of it because the core of what they're doing involves other skills, which you'll get later. Pack, don't even train this. First of all, it's a heal. Second of all, it's a heal which is for it's a heal which is one of the higher tier heals theoretically, but it's a heal which even the healing spec scoundrels do not use. It doesn't make sense to use as a healing spec scoundrel for reasons which I explain in the Sawbones Scoundrel video. But no Sawbones Scoundrel uses Pack, at least none that know what they're doing. It's just not one that there's other better skills that do exactly the same thing better and cheaper and quicker. Don't even train it. Don't spend the money. When you get Sprint at level 15, set it and forget it. Turn Sprint on, take it off your bar. It's always on. You never want to take it off. Why would you want to walk more slowly? You wouldn't. If you need to get at this skill for some reason, again, press P. It'll show up on your list somewhere. Heroic Moment is a skill you should take off your bar, but keep it in mind. This is a skill which gives you, it's got a 20-minute cooldown. It is for emergencies, when you've bit off more than you can chew, and you need this extra survivability to somehow try to eke it out. That's what it's for. Even people who've been playing the game for a year, they use this like when there's a boss that they have had trouble with and he's killed them a time or two. And then they'll use it. So just take it off your bar if there's a boss you come up to and you're having trouble with him, by that time that your bar is so full you cannot have this on there, you can just go ahead and you'll know that, I can take this other skill off and put Heroic Moment on right now just for this one fight. And then you can do that one fight, and then you can take it off again. All right, moving on. Surrender is another skill you should not use. Surrender lowers your threat. it causes enemies to be less likely to attack you and more likely to attack other players who might be better suited to being attacked, like tanks and things like that. It's not that necessary for leveling. It's another skill that if you really need it sometime, if there's an area with like too many enemies, you can put it on the bar temporarily, but by and large, you won't need it. You can safely do without this. Please do not train cheap shot or headshot. Every class has one skill, which basically is for... It's a skill which does very high damage, but only against weak, strong, or standard enemies, and only when they're stunned. So in other words, it does high damage, but you can't use it against elite and champion enemies, which are the ones you'd really want a skill like this for. Personally, I never train it on any of my characters. I never spend the money. I think it's a waste. I don't think that a lot of other people don't use it either. The thing is, even when you have all the quick slot bars in the world, you only have so many buttons on your keyboard, and you only have so many that are comfortable to press. They just do not pass the standard of being useful enough to give them a button that is useful to press, that is easy to press. Like, you can completely ignore these. They're not necessary at all. Smuggle is another skill which you can probably give up. It's a little sad because Smuggle gives you like a third stealth skill. As a Scoundrel, you have the ability to enter into stealth, do an attack, leave vision, entering into stealth again, doing another attack, but then you're stuck and you have to wait for your stealth to go on cooldown. This kind of gives you a third one for free, but Dirty Fighters don't really need that so much. It's helpful, for sure, but it's something which, if you need space, you can get rid of it. Try to keep it. Try to keep it. But if you really need space, you can get rid of Smuggle. So now, what else can we get rid of maybe if we had to? Well, excess freighter flyby. It's a massive AoE attack, which is really great in PvP. It's really cool in general. But in leveling and PvE, it's like, you can do without it. It's the kind of thing you could, again, throw it on your bar if there's a particular area where it would be really useful and take it off after. And you don't even get it to level 48, so it's not that big a concern. So again, I'm trying to look for things which you could get rid of. We're now in the phase of, what could I get rid of if I had to? You're going to want space for your mount, for example, so you don't have to wait and press P and scroll and everything to mount after every fight. But there's not really room for it. So what could I give up? What could we give up? Well, excess freighter flyby is one of them. Another one is quick shot. Quick shot is a pretty nice attack for a Scoundrel, but it's something which, as a Dirty Fighter, it's really not necessary. Your entire spec is centered around other things. So you can kind of pass up quick shot. It would be okay. Try to keep it, but it would honestly be okay if you didn't have it. Same with sabotage charge. Now this one, I'll say, can really increase your damage somewhat considerably. However, it has to be used from within cover, and the way a Dirty Fighting Scoundrel, as opposed to a Dirty Fighting Gunslinger, is going to operate, being in cover is less likely for you. So again, try to keep it, but it's something you could give up, even though ideally you're using it and it will be increasing your damage. But even if you had all the quick slot bars you needed, you would not be using this all the time. It just wouldn't work out that you'd be doing it at all. So don't even worry about that. Another one is Blaster Volley. This is an area of effect skill, which is kind of, I'm looking for it here. It's an area of effect skill which I've never liked for a couple of reasons. The most important one might be that it consumes upper hand. Upper hand is a resource that Scoundrels use. You need to have upper hand in order to use certain attacks. Blaster Volley is not one of the more important attacks, and it uses upper hand. So getting rid of this one would probably be okay. It's nice to have as AoE. I don't like it as AoE. I think it's kind of hard to use, but it's nice to have in your back pocket. But it's also something which is completely fine to give up. And the other thing is that either Diagnostic Scan or Underworld Medicine. A Scoundrel, even if you're not healed, but as DPS like Dirty Fighting, you should have a heal so that you can get in, do some damage, maybe stealth out when you're in trouble, and heal up behind a wall or something. Although that's more of a PvP thing, it'd still be nice to have heals when you're in a leveling fight. It can be the difference between surviving and winning and dying and having to go back to the med center. I would say get rid of Diagnostic Scan and use Underworld Medicine because it heals for more. However, if you're not a Sawbones Scoundrel, it takes a long time to cast. And it costs energy, which you don't necessarily want to be spending energy, whereas Diagnostic Scan is instant, and it basically takes no energy. It's free. It's a much smaller heal, though. I think you'd find Scoundrels would kind of, some would say if you had to pick one, they'd say Diagnostic Scan, others would say Underworld Medicine. You get used to them, you'll understand what they're all about as you play. I would simply say pick one if you need space and get rid of it. And then you'll be fine. So, with that, let's put together a really just simple Dirty Fighting build. This is a pretty standard build. It's not that different at all from what you would get if you were just playing the game with all your quick slot bars or anything. It's pretty much right on. There's only one thing which is really even related to not having as many quick slot bars, and I'll tell you what that is when we get there. So at level 10, put in a point into holdout defense. You get to start doing this at level 10. And then at level 11, another one. Levels 12, 13, and 14, that is, go into no holds barred. 15 into open wound, then mortal wound again, dirty escape again, and now Shrap Bomb. Shrap Bomb is one of the special Dirty Fighting attacks. It will go on your quick bar. You must have this on there. Do not sacrifice this for anything. It's part of your spec. Now Street Tough, and now Cheap Shots. Now you'll see that this skill actually increases the damage by 2 skills I told you could get rid of. But that Wounding Shots is like the main attack for Dirty Fighting, so it's important to buff that. Next, put 3 into Black Market Equipment, and you should now be at level 18. And then into Fighting Spirit. Now into Wounding Shots. Again, this is a skill, an attack. It goes on your quick bar. It is central. It is the attack in Dirty Fighting. You must have this on your bar. After Wounding Shots, you now can go into Rough and Tumble. And now we need to get up here. So that means we're not allowed to do this, though, until we have more points. You have to have 2 more points for it to unlock this tier. So we're going to go down and go Feeling Woozy. Feeling Woozy is similar to a Gunslinger skill, which I say not to get. It slows targets, but because as a Dirty Fighter, you need to remain in range of them, I would say use it. Although, you are also doing leveling rather than PvP, so it's far less important since most enemies aren't going to try to run away from you. So you could easily put the points into smuggled defenses as well, instead of Feeling Woozy, and that might be better. Just keep in mind and read what they do and think about it. Next, put 2 points into Nice Try, and then into Cold-Blooded, you put 3. And finally, at level 40, you will go into Hemorrhaging Blast. Once again, this is a skill. It goes on your quick slot bar. You must have it. It must be on there. Level 41, 42, and 43 go into Browbeater. 44 and 45 go into Element of Surprise. Because they're going to give you Back Blast and Shoot First, do extra damage, and Shoot First is one of the things which gives you upper hand, and you must have upper hand to use Wounding Shots. So that's key. Come over here to Anatomy Lessons, which lowers the energy cost of Vital Shot, which is something you should be using all the time as a Dirty Fighter. And finally, you're going to put 3 points into Bedside Manner. These are in the Sawbones tree. They even sound like healing skills, but they're not. They improve your overall character. This increases your stats, and this increases the damage of attacks that you're going to be using. Or rather, reduces the energy cost of attacks which you're going to be using. So that's that. That's your spec. That's your build for Dirty Fighting Scoundrel. The text is, again, in the link below the video. This is how you do it if you only have the 2 quick slot bars. It's completely doable. Especially if after you've played for a little bit, you know, once you get to level 30 or 40, you say, I'm going to activate the cover bar and get the extra 10 slots. That's really helpful. So the only thing, though, is keep in mind that if you do that, you have to be in cover when you're using those skills. So you'd have to plan which one of those skills you would be able to use while stationary, right? So, for example, you could go up to an enemy and go into cover and then use Hemorrhaging Blast if you put that on the cover bar. But you can't just like stand there and walk up without using cover and do it. So, decisions to be made, but you'll understand the game better by that point, and you'll be able to make those decisions perfectly well. So I hope this works out well for you guys. Have fun.